Creating the condition for women to participate fully in the workforce and public life is not only a matter of fairness, but a driver for economic growth, innovation, productivity, and social progress. This is also an opportunity to take stock and explore new measures to fully harness female talent across all sectors. So before we start, some housekeeping rules. This event will be web streamed and is interpreted in 16 languages. So please check the availability if you need from your room. There's also a speech-to-text facility that is available. QR codes are available on the desks. At a later stage, if time allows, you might have a possibility to ask questions to the speakers. So my colleagues will now distribute cards where you can note your question throughout the event. Please indicate on the card to which speakers you would like to address them, and we will collect the card at the end of the discussion. Let's enter the discussion indeed, and welcome on stage. We have Vice President Antonella Sberna, member of the High-Level Group on Gender Equality and Diversity, responsible for Gender Equality Week. Vice President Eva Kopacz, Chair of the European Parliament, High-Level Group on Gender Equality and Diversity. Chair Lina Galvez, Chair of Parliament's Committee on Women's Rights and Gender Equality, and of course, and thank you, our keynote speaker, Executive Vice President of the European Commission for Technological Sovereignty, Security and Democracy, Henna Virkkunen. Thank you all for being here, and I will, without further ado, I think Mrs. Berna, Vice President, I'll give you the floor.
It's okay, it's working. Buonasera a tutti.
Good afternoon, everyone.
I will speak in Italian. Grazie a tutti.
I would like to thank everyone for being here. Thank you for joining us once again. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you to the MEPs who are here with me and who have worked side by side on gender equality issues throughout the whole year. We have been promoting the topic that we're looking at this afternoon. This is the 6th Gender Equality Week. And we're focusing on talent. That is what is at the heart of this week. We had a debate on what themes to look at, what activities to organize, and then at the end, we all agreed that this could be a positive opportunity to talk about talent, skills, to talk about women who have made a difference thanks to their commitment, thanks to their tireless work, and thanks to either the conditions they found or the difficulties they came up against during their careers. So I'd like to thank all the guest speakers that we have for accepting the invitation, because we'll be listening to real stories, real life stories, the stories of women who will tell us about their lives, about the difficulties they came up against, but there'll also be role models, examples that we can get inspiration from and apply it to our daily lives. So let us look at talent, how we can showcase talent, and how we can create the right conditions for there to be gender equality. Now, what do equal opportunities mean? It means that we have to be able to grasp the same opportunities as men. We have to be able to have be able to take the same path to get help and arrive at the same destination. I say this often when I speak or when I'm interviewed. Talent and skills shouldn't know any gender. They should be expressed. They should have the opportunity to be expressed. And everyone has to have the strength, the long-term vision to create better ecosystems. And we know this in the Women's Committee. We know this in the high-level group and, of course, in the Bureau, where we deal with these issues on a daily basis. So then, of course, the same applies to the complex activities that the European Commission is responsible for, and the same applies to our work as MEPs or in our families, in our workplace. We have to make sure that when we have these gender equality weeks, these events help us reach this goal, because this afternoon and where we are today is one of the main events, but there are others. We need to be able to take stock of the situation and see how far we've come with our gender equality policy. And we'll be listening to different stories. We'll be hearing about different activities and realities that might seem far-flung or not so close by, and yet there'll be examples of those who found the right conditions to thrive, to flourish. And maybe it was because at that moment, at that post, it was possible. And why can't we learn from that? Any suggestion is welcome. This morning, I had a discussion with the Director General responsible for personnel. We met her with Eva Koppert to talk about the Gender Action Plan. This is an action plan that the European Parliament works on every 5 years, and I'm sure the President will talk about this. So we asked questions. We wanted to know what we could do and how we can measure what it's doing, because we do measure the activities we carry out and what we have achieved. But at the same time, we need to have a human face. We have to think about human beings. They should be at the heart of our policies. And we need to focus on women, on young children, on young girls, mothers, and so on. We need to find the right formula to pull all the different threads together, because we have policies, they can be measured, and we also have to think about what is at the heart of this, what we want to achieve. Yes, this is a very ambitious goal, but the European Parliament is an institution that represents almost 500 million citizens. So if we don't ask ourselves these questions, who will? We have to harness this kind of opportunity to do so. Not only is it our duty as an institution, but it is also, we need to set the example for those who are looking to us. We've got media and external observers looking at what we're doing. And so we need to be able to give them examples, virtuous examples that we promote here in this institution. There is potential, but there's a lack of recognition. And that is the definition of a talent gap. And that's what we're trying to address today. We want to look at knowledge, how we can measure this, and how we can make sure that our policies are firmly anchored on what's happening on the ground. We want to change the destinies and fate of our young women. There are young women listening to us this afternoon. There are those who are listening to us through web streaming, and there are colleagues, MEPs, who work for different committees. Gender policies are something we don't pay enough attention to. I think that these should be cross-cutting policies. Gender needs to be mainstreamed. And all parliamentary committees and all their activities have to factor this in, because all the legislation we adopt has an impact on people's real lives, on society. So we need to look at the activities carried out by women, young women, and even mothers, because they have family duties, and we need to create the right conditions, because this is also what this is about. We need to make sure that talent in all its expressions, in all walks of life, can be harnessed so it can flourish, so it can thrive. This should be our task. And we have to make sure that we create the right tools to make sure that this becomes a reality. So we have the Gender Equality Plan that the European Parliament has. We just voted on it in the Bureau. That will lead to a roadmap. And this shows that we have a path ahead of us. And then the skills plan from the European Commission, the social pillar. We need to make sure that we bring all of this together. The European Parliament has also started debating on MEPs who might have children themselves and who cannot take part in parliamentary debate, and see how we can involve them so that women don't have to choose between work and family, so they don't have to choose between their professional aspirations and their family. Because, of course, you don't always choose these certain moments. So we need to create the right conditions so that women can choose their paths and so that they can reconcile work with their family life. It is an enormous challenge, but the European Parliament is very keen to focus on this. I think I've hopefully given you the key points for this afternoon. I don't want to take up more time because the women that we're going to hear from have very interesting and valuable stories. Once again, thank you very much for accepting this invitation. Thank you very much for coming. I hope that this Gender Equality Week will be like the other weeks we've had, but will also really plant the seed for personal and institutional development. Thank you very much.
Sì, scusate, emozione. La Presidente del Parlamento.
The President of the European Parliament, Mrs. Metsola, I'd like to thank her very much. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here with us this afternoon, but we have a video message, so we'll be showing you the video, and we'd like to thank her very much for her strength and energy and for being at the helm of our Parliament. Thank you.
Non so dove sia la regia, ma se...
Perhaps the technicians could restart the video and check what's going on.
We can try a last time, and otherwise we will go with the next speakers, and we will hear President Metsola at a later stage. I think it might be easier. So I will now turn to Vice President Eva Kopacz. Vice President.
Bardzo dziękuję.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to meet you on this 6th Gender Equality Week. Being responsible for equality and equality of opportunity in the European Parliament, I consider this an excellent opportunity to reflect on how much has already been achieved and how much still needs to be done. One of the key challenges Europe faces is reflected in the title. For our continent to be able to develop in a fair and balanced way, we need to create the conditions in which everybody has equality of opportunity, irrespective of where they live, where they come from, their gender, their age. Talent should not be a luxury for the few. We need a system which inspires, a system which supports and encourages the development of everybody, starting with schools, universities, workplaces, and public institutions. We must always remember that throughout history, women have faced obstacles in the field of talent and opportunity, and they still do. It's important to highlight the role of women in discovering talent. Women are creative, women are determined. Our society has amount to benefit from them, and yet women face day-to-day obstacles in terms of access to education or reconciling work and private life. Supporting female talent and eliminating obstacles gives women the opportunity to develop their potential to the full, and at the same time it will enrich us for the future. Gender equality is not just a value, it's a precondition for our economy, for our European economy to be able to use the potential it already has. We have to have fairness, equality in reality, and a new style of modern leadership. Equality of opportunity, access to education, flexible working, supporting personal development. These are not nice to haves. These are the fundamentals of a resilient and innovative Europe. A Europe which can spot talent in every human being and gives it the opportunity to thrive and flourish. I look forward to hearing today's inspiring speeches from people who will show us how much can be achieved when place is set aside for diversity of talent. Let's listen to these stories and understand that the future of Europe will depend on our ability to take advantage and discover the potential in all of us. I'd like to thank the Vice President of the European Parliament, Antonella Sberna, for her determination, her resolve, her tremendous energy with which she pursues the matter of equality in our institution. Thanks to her work and thanks to her leadership, the Gender Equality Week is not just an event that happens every year, but it's a real forum for dialogue, inspiration and exchange. It's a place where European values are close enough to touch. I do hope that this Gender Equality Week is going to take Europe forward. But we won't just be talking about equality, but we'll actually take equality forward, where we'll be able to have talent irrespective of gender and age, where that talent can flourish. Thank you.
I know. I now give the floor to Chair Galvez. Mrs. Galvez.
So thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Vice President. Thank you, all Vice President, Commissioner, also for being here in this Gender Equality Week that also tries to bring equality to all of our policies and action. I would like to start my intervention remembering the famous quote from Maya Angelou. We all should know that diversity makes for the rich tapestry, and we must understand that all the threads of the tapestry are equal in value. Today, we are talking about one of the most powerful and still underutilized tapestry, which is women's talent, and how we can measure that women have the same opportunities as men. It is not only a matter of fairness. We know that very well. I'm sure Vice President Evrikuni will mention it. It is also a question of economic and social benefits, and I will say also something important, to have a healthy democracy, because there is no democracy, there is no European Union project without equality. I normally say another quote much more modest than the first one, that it is said that talent is equally spread, is everywhere, but opportunities are not. Throughout history, women have proven their brilliance time and time again. Just think on Maria Sklodowska-Curie, the first woman to win 2 Nobel Prizes and in different disciplines. But sometimes I think it is just a miracle that a woman like her existed, or that was able to do what she did, not existed, because I'm sure there were a lot of Marie Curies that were not able to do it what she wanted or what she achieved, because she was not able to enter the Sorbonne. She did all her experiments in a shed. And she did as well because her husband was really helping her to do it, or encouraging her to do it. And her father-in-law was taking care of her 2 daughters. So that brings me to think about also another talent we are losing, that it is male care talent. But today we are not talking about that. So it is not a question itself of talent, but it is mainly a question of opportunities, of real opportunities. And barriers are still stand in the way. Too many women are still paid less than their male counterparts for the same work. Too few women occupy leadership positions in companies or governments. In many parts of the world, girls are still discouraged from studying science, technology, mathematics, both in explicit or explicit way. And this is not only have an impact on these specific women that are discouraged, but it has an impact on all of us through stereotypes and conditioning our choices, the choices we made based on real opportunities. So these barriers are just not unfair, as I was saying before, they are a waste of human potential. And when half of the population faces limited access to education, career development, or leadership opportunities, we all lose out on innovation, creativity, progress, and a healthy democracy. So what we have to do? So we have discussed from the Farm Committee, it is obviously one of the topics we have been discussing. What we have to do in order to have equal opportunities policy? So first we need to create system, institutions, protocols, as it has been done now for the high-level group here in the European Parliament, and has been explained. These protocols that are not only based on male experience, they are not what we call androcentric, identifying just male experience with universal. Second, obviously, we have to work on education and also empowerment from a very early age. There are studies showing us that already when kids have 6 years old, boys feel much more confident than girls. And obviously, we need really to break that up. We really need also girls to feel confidence to explore whatever they want to do. And also to say, boys, that to choose care activities, care professions, it is also important. For that, obviously, we need to improve working conditions in these care professions, but also to remove all discrimination from these STEM professions. Third, we need investment, mentorship, sponsorship. Every woman who succeeds, as every man as well, don't forget that, often does because someone opened the door for her, believed in her potential, or helped her navigate the challenges of this also male-dominated space. So we need more on that. We need more leaders, both men and women, who actively lift others up. Some data are unfortunately clear, and I take that opportunity to say that at a certain moment I had to escape because we have a pilot project that I promoted from the previous term on closing the gender gap on innovation. Just to say that only 1% of all the venture capital funding goes to women. Only that. So there's something we really need to change. We really need more women also in these decision-making spaces in order to take the right decision. And when they arrive there, I'm sorry to say that, probably, is don't act as bee queens, because it's not your only individual achievement, but it's also a collective achievement. And finally, we obviously need to work on the changing mindset. True equality isn't just a policy, it is a culture. And it is about challenging the stereotypes, that it has already been said, speaking up when we see a bias or recognize that gender equality is not pursued, and something that is benefiting, and we have to insist on that, is benefiting everyone. So for that, we need also to challenge our androcentric knowledge which is one of the fields where we are suffering already gender backlashes in some countries of the world, and we hope that will not happen here. So the truth, as Antonella Sberna has said, is that talent has no gender. When we limit women, we limit progress. When we give women the same opportunities as men, when we value their ideas, our leadership, our creativity, we unlock the full potential of humanity. So let's be the Europe that ensures that no girl ever doubts her worth, no woman ever questions her right to be at the table, and no society ever wasted the brilliance of half of its people. The Europe that promotes this plan, Choose Europe, should also encourage European women and women from abroad to grow up, innovate, and create. So let's move forward all together. Thank you very much for putting this Gender Equality Week all together. And this is just the beginning. And I hope it will be a brilliant week, and we will advance in our commitment and also in our policies and regulation. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Gracias, Mrs. Galvez. And I turn now to our keynote speaker, Executive Vice President of the European Commission, Henna Virkkunen. Thank you for accepting being part of this panel. You have the floor, of course.
Thank you so much, dear Vice President Sberna, Vice President Kobas, Chair Galvez, and honorable members and dear guests. I'm very happy to join you today for this Gender Equality Week 25 here at the European Parliament, because we know that this House has always led the way for equality. Your commitment shows that Europe's strength lies in its people and in all diversity. Also today, you are leading by example, so it's great to be here. Speaking in this room, what I see, it's full of positive energy and determination. At the European Commission, our core mission is to strengthen Europe's competitiveness, and today's discussion topic, creating the conditions for every talent to shine, it's very close to our mission. Because equality is not only about fairness, it's about our growth, our innovation, and our competitiveness. Our prosperity in Europe is threatened by the widening talent gap, as we know. And this gap, it undermines our ability to lead in a world defined by technology. Across different sectors, it's very difficult for companies to find workers with the right digital and also the technical skills. For example, if we are looking at ICT, over half of European companies, they are reporting difficulties in hiring specialists. We currently have only around 10 million ICT professionals working in Europe, and this is well below of our digital decade targets, where we were setting target of 20 million by 2030. So we have reached only 50% of that what we were achieving or trying to achieve. But at the same time, we know that women are making up more than 50%, exactly 55% of the population of European Union. But they are representing only 19% of ICT specialists and also 1/3 of STEM graduates. We see also that this imbalance is very deeply problematic, not only because women, they can provide diverse perspectives into design and development of technology, boosting innovation, but also because we cannot afford to exclude half of our talent from such a very vital sector. And this is not only a social gap for us, it's also a very strategic gap we are facing. So if we want to strengthen Europeans' innovations, productivity, and also our resilience, we must make use of all the skills we have in Europe. We must encourage a diverse and gender-balanced workforce. Research shows very clearly that closing the gender gap in digital and STEM could add up to 16 billion euros to Europe's GDP every year. So it's clear that gender equality is not only a nice thing to have, it's clear that gender equality is not a cost, it's an investment in our competitiveness and growth. As Executive Vice President for Tech Sovereignty, Security and Democracy, I see that gender equality is very important in all these aspects of my portfolio. It's very important in tech sovereignty, like I already underlined, because we cannot lead in AI, in cybersecurity, or advanced computing while excluding half of our population. But also, it's very important to our security. We need experts with diverse backgrounds for preparedness and also for our whole of society approach for our security. And it's also important for our democracy, because representation matters. Women must shape our technology to ensure that our digital transformation reflects our core values in Europe: equality, openness, and respect for human dignity. So the European Commission is now acting on gender equality. We recently adopted the Union of Skills package, and it strengthens education and lifelong learning to prepare all Europeans for the digital transformation. As part of the Union of Skills, we are now investing in digital education and AI literacy, so every citizen they can navigate and shape new technologies. We have also Girls Go STEM initiative, a program which aims to attract 1 million girls to STEM studies and professions by 2028. We have also digital skills academies in quantum, AI, and in virtual worlds, hubs for excellence and inclusion. And through our EU programs, Digital Europe, Horizon Europe, we fund relevant projects, for example, the Women Tech EU project, supporting female founders in deep tech startups. Also, we are having EU Code Week for young people, especially girls, to master the basics of coding and computation. Connecting Women in Digital project we have also, which addresses the slow progress on gender balance in the ICT sector. And in fact, next week, the very first Women in Digital Summit will present the new Women in Digital Index. This summit will bring together a community to move from fragmented initiatives to coordinated and systematic change. I very warmly invite you to join that network to increase girls' and women's participation in ICT studies and professions. And we are also working to make Europe's online space safer and more trustworthy for all by implementing our Digital Services Act and AI Act. Every woman should be able to participate freely and confidently in the digital public space. Closing the gap requires us to work together. Governments, companies, educators, and civil society all have a role to play here. We think that we need schools and parents that encourage girls to explore STEM from a very early age. We also need employers who recognize and reward skills and creativity, not stereotypes. And we also need investors who back women-led innovation, and mentors and allies who open doors and help each other. When we empower women, we strengthen our economies, we strengthen our societies, and also we strengthen our democracies. Throughout my career, from Finnish local politics to the European level, I have seen that the women, they are bringing very important perspective and contribution that makes all the teams stronger. In my view, leadership is not about speaking the loudest. It's about building trust, delivering results, and supporting each other. To the women and girls who are listening today, Europe needs your curiosity and courage. We need you to be involved in creating and deploying technology. At the European institutions, we are committed to achieving a digital transformation that leaves nobody behind, because achieving gender balance benefits everybody. So, dear audience, dear participants, let's make Europe a place where every talent is valued and every girl and woman can reach their full potential. That is not just about gender equality, that is Europe at its best.
Thank you very much, Vice President Commissioner Virkunen. I know you need to leave now, but thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your inspiring words. Before we close this first session, we will hear the message of President Metsola. Apologies again because it didn't work, so I hope it's ready now for distribution.
Dear colleagues, dear friends, every day in my role as president, I am lucky to meet incredible women from across our continent. There are roughly 229 million talented women across our continent who drive Europe forward. Our union is built by Europeans for Europeans, every woman, every man. And they are right to expect certain things from our shared home, including an environment where every person has equality of opportunity. This House is making this ambition a reality. We are pushing to make life easier for people and businesses. Last month, we confirmed the next steps towards a European roadmap for women's rights. And we recently adopted our new gender action plan. But to continue smashing glass ceilings and empowering women, we need to go further and we need to go faster. We need more women building careers in STEM, with more traineeships and paths to employment. We need more women founding businesses with better access to support for our innovators and our inventors. And we need more women entering positions of power, feeling emboldened to run for office and change our society. Our drive for equality makes sense at every level, because when women rise, communities rise with them. Equality boosts our economies. It transforms our societies. It deepens our democracies. Getting there will take vigilance, drive, and most of all, action. That is why I'm so glad that this event is taking place here in the European Parliament. And my thanks is to fellow members, Vice President Antonella Sberna and Lina Galvez Munoz for making this week happen, and to every one of you for being here. The challenge ahead is great, but together I know we can build a better, fairer, more equal Europe. So let's get to work.
That was indeed a very inspiring message to close our first session. And now we will move to a second part of our event, where we'll be hearing inspiring stories of women who have been achieving remarkable success despite structural barriers, learning from their experience and how to create an environment where any talent can truly thrive. So we will be hearing, and they will join on stage now, Consolata Golfo, President of the Marisa Belisario Foundation, Gelsomina Vigliotti, the Vice President of the European Investment Bank, will join us online, Isabel Legalo Flores, the Secretary General of the European Economic and Social Committee, Michaela Benthaus, space engineer and young graduate trainee at the European Space Agency, Solange Führer, Chief Director of the Emergency Department of Aurelia Hospital in Rome, and Joanna Pricker, computer scientist, educator and game designer at the Graz University of Technology and professor at Ludwig Maximilian University of Munich. So we welcome you on stage. It's wonderful to have you here in the Parliament for this week, this particular moment. And we will come with our first speaker, I think directly. We have this Consolata Golfo, the President of Fondazione Marisa Belisario. She has devoted her career to advancing women's leadership and talent in Italy. Mrs. Golfo, prego.
Buon pomeriggio a tutte.
Good afternoon. It is a great privilege for me to be here today. I'd like to thank the Vice President Antonella Sberna for the invitation, and I'd like to thank the MEPs who spoke before me and for all of those who are here. I am the president of the Marisa Belisario Foundation. This is the oldest and most authoritative women's association in Italy. We are a non-profit organization and an NGO and a historic archive recognized by the Italian government. We celebrated our 35th birthday, if you like, in the presence of the President of the Italian Republic, Sergio Mattarella. Our task is to always promote and develop and encourage female participation in all fields. Now, our foundation was set up because of the dream of a young woman back in the 1980s that admired the covers and articles dedicated to Marisa Belisario. Marisa Belisario was the first and only telecom's top manager, a world-renowned one. And unfortunately, she died at 52. I felt it was important to make sure that her example didn't go to waste, that this model wouldn't just be a one-off, an exception. I wanted a strong female leadership that could bring women's causes to the heart of politics, the economy, and society in Italy and the rest of the world. Over the years, 37 in fact, I have brought together thousands of women with endless energy in Italy, and we've worked tirelessly in order to turn this dream into reality with specific goals. Let me give you an example. The law in Italy that introduced gender quotas on the boards of listed companies and state-owned enterprises. This is legislation that I worked on and that I got approved by the Italian Parliament back in 2011, and that has led to extraordinary results. Back then, the percentage of women on company boards was only 5.6%, and at the moment, it is more than 43%. Italy, in the past, was a black sheep when it came to equality, but in this case, in this instance, it acted as a trailblazer and is the country with the third highest number of women on company boards. And this is a model that other countries and the EU itself followed, but 10 years later. We also have more than 600 women that over the years have received the Marisa Belisario Prize. It is even called the Women's Oscar nowadays. And this is another example that shows how the dream became a reality. So now we talk about female empowerment and female leadership. But 37 years ago, these cases were rare, and we brought them into the limelight against a backdrop of silence. So we're also very happy that we awarded the Marisa Belisario Prize to President Metsola and Commissioner Reding, who was the first to raise the issue of gender quotas in the European Parliament, and then later on Giorgia Meloni, the first female prime minister in Italy. These are stories of ordinary and extraordinary excellence that have contributed to spreading a new awareness, that have lit up a path that we have to follow. And this brings me to the subject we're looking at today, and that is talent. Talent is one of the most valuable and decisive resources for the future of Europe. The first point I'd like to make is that talent has no gender. Talent is energy that goes beyond borders, that stems from intelligence, curiosity, and the capacity to innovate. It grows, and you can find it anywhere where there is space to let it thrive, and wherever there is trust and there are opportunities. But the problem is that nowadays, unfortunately, often women's talent remains invisible, silenced, or even undervalued, from politics to the economy. Sometimes it doesn't find the right conditions to flourish. More often, it crashes against a wall of obstacles and prejudice. We need to create the right conditions. We need to get rid of these obstacles. It's not an issue of fairness. It is actually a prerequisite if we want there to be economic growth, competitiveness, and if we want Europe to move forward. Because for every woman excluded from decision-making power, for every interrupted career, for every voice and idea that we don't listen to, the loss isn't just for women, but for the whole of Europe. We cannot think that we can tackle and overcome the enormous challenges of our century. In other words, the digital transition, the green transition, the population transition, social and geopolitical tensions, and war, if we deprive ourselves of these resources. This is why we need a new European alliance to promote female talent. And that is why I'm very happy that this event is taking place. This is what we have to achieve. We need a shared commitment to promote full employment and equal pay and ensure that women have equal access to STEM education, that they can access mentoring and leadership programs for young women. Europe has to bridge the gap between principles and implementation. It has to bridge the gap between values and specific policies in the field of equality. For example, I'm thinking of the new directive on pay transparency. That is going to have to be transposed by the member states by June 2026, but which, with the exception of Spain, is still hovering somewhere between promises and delays. A Europe that dictates rules but doesn't put them in practice, that talks about equality but that puts up with structural differences, cannot say that it has accomplished its task. And you have a role as women in the European institutions. You have such important posts, and therefore your role is even more decisive. Women's talent doesn't require privileges but opportunities. We have to showcase diversity and make sure that women can reconcile their private lives and work. We need to recognize the creative and productive value of motherhood. We have to promote inclusive leadership and meritocratic models. Female talent needs our institutions, universities, companies, to make sure that women aren't just there, but that they can have influence, that they can decide and transform from within. We need this to be a team effort. We need to show collective intelligence to get over the bias that still feeds gender violence. We need the trust of new generations that are rewriting the rules of public presence, social commitment, and innovation. We need to build networks and alliances. We need to be bold. We need to imagine solutions where others only see limitations. Female talent is a different way of looking at the world. Women across Europe are bringing with them a new outlook when it comes to the green transition, digitalization, social economy, and gender medicine. They are reinventing leadership as a service. Competition is being reinvented by them as cooperation, power as shared responsibility. Let us make sure that their voices count. Let us make sure that their ideas make a difference, that their leadership really changes the way we govern. Let us find a way to raise their profile, put the spotlight on their merits, results, and the goals they have achieved. I'm thinking of those scientists who have explored new frontiers of knowledge, women entrepreneurs who innovate, who invest, who cure us, who govern our regions and cities, that provide capital and a new vision, that are new leaders. Let us make sure that these women are at the heart of the narrative. Every time a young woman feels that she can become what she wants, then Europe is honoring its promise. Every time a woman is free to express her own talent and that we welcome a new voice to public debate, Europe becomes stronger, and so does our democracy. We breathe new life into our democracy in this way. Let me conclude by saying that in 2090, according to the World Economic Forum, is the year that will have full gender equality. The year 2090 makes me think of the fact that the Bank of Italy thought that we would need 50 years to get a 30% ratio of women on management boards, on company boards in Italy, and yet we achieved this in 10 years. This shows that estimates are reasonable, but they don't factor in the unforeseeable, and we are the unforeseeable factor here. We can make a difference. It is with determination, ambition, that we can provide higher speed. We have the skills, not to mention the strength. We have to act together. We have to put aside our differences and different ideologies and overcome individualism. Female talent isn't about gender, it's about freedom. And freedom is the biggest strength and power and legacy of the Europe that we aspire to. Thank you very much, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Mrs. Golfo, for your very inspiring opening reflections. Now we have joining us online Mrs. Gelsomina Vigliotti. She's joining us remotely. She's the Vice President of the European Investment Bank. Mrs. Vigliotti, a lei la parola. You hear us? Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Grazie a tutti, in particolare al Vicepresidente.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Vice President Sberna for the invitation, and I'm very sorry that I couldn't come to Brussels, but unfortunately I had other commitments and I couldn't make it to Brussels. I'll be doing my speech in English.
Parliament, distinguished guest, Europe stands at a crossroad. We have made undeniable progress on gender equality, yet the talent gap persists. Women remain underrepresented in STEM, entrepreneurship, and leadership. This is not only unjust, it is inefficient. Every year, the gender employment gap costs our economy €370 billion, which is around 3% of the GDP of the European Union. In a world driven by innovation and knowledge, Europe cannot afford to waste talent. The evidence speaks for itself. Gender equality strengthens growth, resilience, and governance. Looking at the ratings that measure environmental, social, and governance performance, the so-called ESG scores, companies with 30% women on boards achieve significantly higher results. Women-led businesses often outperform on risk and repayment. In financial services alone, better inclusion of women represents €600 billion global opportunity, around 0.6% of the global GDP. Investing in women is investing in Europe's competitiveness and sustainability. At the European Investment Bank, we have made gender equality and women's economic empowerment a cornerstone of our strategy. Our role is not only to finance projects, but to shape markets and create systemic change. Let me share what this means in practice. Through the InvestEU Gender Finance Lab, we are working with commercial banks across Europe to increase investment in women entrepreneurs. Already 25 banks have joined this initiative, and we are seeing results. In Spain, we have partnered with a bank to support women in the pharmacy sector. In Poland, we are financing small and medium-sized companies owned or led by women. And these are concrete steps that make a real difference. We have also expanded on sustainability awareness bonds to include gender equality and women's economic empowerment. These bonds are a financial instrument that allows investors to support projects with strong social and environmental impact. By directing the proceeds to initiatives that improve access to finance for women-owned businesses, we send a clear message. Gender equality is integral to sustainability. Last year, we launched the Women Climate Leader Network, bringing together private sector leaders to champion sustainability and inclusive leadership. When we started, we could not have imagined how strongly those four words, women, climate, leaders, network, would resonate it. Actually, now these words are very much delicate to be pronounced in international gatherings, and we are very proud, to sustain these values. Today, this network is shaping climate action and corporate governance with a gender lens. In Italy, through our recent 200 million partnership with Banca Ifis, we are expanding access to finance for pharmacies, dedicating at least 60 million euro to businesses led by women, an initiative that empowers female pharmacists, strengthens local health care, and promotes inclusive growth. And we are not stopping there. By the end of this year, we will launch the third Gender Action Plan, which will strengthen our impact across lending, advisory, and partnerships. Our ambition is simple: to ensure that every EIB operation contributes to closing the gender gap. But finance alone is not enough. Bridging the talent gap means building ecosystems where women have access to education, networks, and mentorship. Through our advisory work and partnership, we are helping institutions design inclusive systems that enable women to thrive. These initiatives reflect our conviction: gender equality is a driver of innovation, sustainability, and growth. At the EIB, we are committed to making gender-smart investing the norm, not the exception, as we believe that bridging the female talent gap is about more than recruitment. Progress depends on collective leadership: governments, financial institutions, businesses, civil society. Together, we can ensure every woman has the opportunity to contribute their talent to Europe's sustainable and inclusive growth. And while this week rightly focuses on gender equality, let us commit also to closing every talent gap, including those linked to neurodiversity and other forms of difference. As executive sponsor of Enable, our EIB employee network dedicated to disability inclusion and neurodivergence, I am proud to champion a workplace where every individual can thrive, because true progress means allowing every talent to shine. Thank you very much. Grazie mille.
Grazie mille, Vice President. And up next, we have Isabel Gallo Flores. She's the first woman to be Secretary General of the European Economic and Social Committee. Mrs. Legallo.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies, gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, fellow advocates for a more inclusive Europe. It's an honor to be with you today to reflect on what it truly means to face the talent gap. And let me start with a simple conviction. Europe's strength lies in its people, in the diversity of the talents, in the experiences, perspectives that shape our institutions, our communities, and our future. And yet, despite this richness and this collective intelligent potential, we continue to lose so much of that potential, not because it doesn't exist, but because it remains unseen, unsupported, or excluded. The talent gap we speak of today is not a gap in capacity. It is a gap in opportunity, in recognition, and in belonging. At the European Economic and Social Committee, we see this challenge clearly. We respond with purpose. We believe that to close the talent gap, we must first create the conditions for every person to shine. This means building environments where people are not only present, but empowered, where difference is not only tolerated, but it is valued, where contribution is not only welcome, but it is elevated. We call this internal vibrancy, the energy that emerges when our values and our actions are aligned, when we don't just speak about equality, but we embody it, when we truly walk the talk. This is why a year ago, I, together with my teams, launched the ESC Women's Forum. It was never meant to be just a space, a meeting space. It was meant to be a living commitment to solidarity, to inclusion, and to visibility. And today, it has become a safe and vibrant space where colleagues and members connect, share, and grow together across departments, roles, and life experiences. And this year, we are taking another step forward. We're launching a mentoring program to support women's professional development, not only to build skills, but to nurture confidence, leadership, and purpose. Because closing this talent gap is not simply a question of training. It is about trust, it is about recognition, and it is about, again, empowerment. So let me be clear, it's not a women's issue. This is about rethinking how our institutions, like ours, live up to the democratic ideals we stand for. We must be credible in the eyes of those that we serve. And credibility starts with coherence. If we want a Europe that values every talent, we must model this within our walls. This is how we unlock not just individual potential, but the collective intelligence. I was talking at the beginning, you all were talking also in your speeches so far. Because when people feel safe to be themselves, when they feel seen and supported, creativity flourishes, resilience grows, and institutions become more than structures. They become communities of meaning. As someone who has worked across different sectors, from philanthropy to civil society to institutional leadership, I have learned that systems only change when values and actions meet. Impact is not only something we measure externally, it's something we cultivate internally in how we treat one another, in the culture we build, in the future we imagine together. And this vision is also strongly echoed in the new program of our EESC president, Seamus Boland, who's just started, who has called on us to build a union of opportunities, of security, of resilience, a union where no one is left behind and where poverty, exclusion, and invisibility are no longer acceptable realities. His emphasis on eradicating poverty, protecting civic space, and fostering participation, especially among youth, reminds us that talent cannot flourish without dignity, without security, and without the conditions to thrive. It is only when we remove structural barriers and actively invest in people that we begin to close the gap between potential and impact. So yes, Europe needs talent in tech, in science, in care work, in education. But above all, Europe needs to recognize the talent that is already here in every woman denied leadership, in every migrant facing systemic barriers, in every young person told to wait their turn. Inclusion is not about favor, it's about justice. And justice, like peace, must be practiced daily in policy, in leadership, and in the courage to challenge status quo. I am moved by the stories of the speakers around us today, from pioneering astronauts to digital innovators, from doctors leading in emergency rooms to game designers shaping the future of learning. We are reminded that talent does not come from privilege. It comes from passion, from perseverance, and the space to grow. At the EESC, we are committed to creating those spaces, not only because it is right, but because it is necessary for the democratic resilience of Europe. The more inclusive we become, the stronger we are. And the stronger we are, the more future-ready we will be for the crises we must face and for the hope we must build. Let us not reduce talent to a question of skills alone. Talent is also about dignity, about giving people the power to contribute and the recognition they deserve when they do. So we must ask ourselves, what kind of Europe do we want to build? One that filters talent among a narrow lens of conformity, or one that celebrates the full spectrum of human contribution? Let us choose the latter. Let us build institutions where every talent shines, where no one is left behind, and where democracy is not just a system, but a shared project of belonging. Together, we can build that Europe, a place where opportunity is real, where inclusion is more than a promise, and where every person has the space to grow and thrive. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. And let me now give the floor to Michaela Benthaus. She's a space engineer and a young graduate trainee at the European Space Agency. I think, Michaela, Sie haben das Wort.
Okay. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the European Parliament, and everyone who's listening today. Thank you for giving me this chance to speak for women with disabilities. My name is Michaela Benthaus. I'm a space engineer working at the European Space Agency on Mars atmosphere science and landing algorithms for spacecraft landings. And soon I'll become the first wheelchair user to go to space ever. That may sound like a dream, and in many ways it is. I feel incredibly privileged to be standing here today. Thank you so much. Okay, I feel incredibly privileged to be standing here today, but getting to this point was anything but easy. While I was still a non-disabled person, I began my studies in economics, not because I loved it, but because I doubted myself. I thought I would never make it through engineering or physics. It took me 2 full years to finally find the confidence to switch to mechatronics. Some people who started studying with me didn't take me seriously and smiled at me. To them, I was just this blonde girl who, in their eyes, wouldn't make it 2 months in engineering. A few years later, at the end of my bachelor's degree, I had a mountain bike accident that left me paralyzed. I always dreamed about becoming a space engineer and flying to space someday, but after my accident, I felt like this dream was over. After all, astronauts are still often seen as superhumans, as people who are supposed to be perfectly healthy. After passing the approval test for aerospace engineering, I got the incredible opportunity to participate in a zero-G flight, a flight where you feel weightless for about 20 seconds as the aircraft follows a parabolic path. For me, it felt like the chance of a lifetime. I felt incredibly lucky to be part of a parabolic flight as a person with a disability. A little later, I spent 2 weeks in isolation inside a space habitat, simulating a space mission on Earth and testing how accessible the environment was for a wheelchair user. Working on increasing accessibility in the space industry and human spaceflight, ensuring that everyone has the chance to reach for the stars, is a project truly close to my heart. Today, as I stand here, my dream is about to come true. I'll be flying to space soon, and I can't wait to see our planet from above.
That's so nice.
The story you just heard is in many ways a privileged one. I was able to achieve all of this because I had financial support and because there were people who believed in me, people who saw my potential. Along the way, many didn't take me or my dreams seriously, but a few did, and with their help, I was able to create all of these opportunities. Being a woman and having a disability means facing 2 barriers, and facing those 2 barriers means often only getting half of the chances, while needing to work twice as hard to prove myself and to be seen by others. Sometimes I wonder if people would even notice me if I didn't do all these things. And even now, some people turn it against me, saying I only achieve these things because I'm a woman and because I'm disabled. Sometimes I feel like there's no way to get it right, no way to fit the expectations people have of me. If I don't perform at least as well as others, I'm quickly left behind, even though I face a lot of greater challenges every day, which makes it a lot harder to keep up. But if I'm too successful, some people also don't like it. The truth is, my story is not an exception. It reflects what many women with disabilities experience every day. These inequalities are not isolated. They are intersectional. Gender and disability come together to create face. Across Europe, women with disabilities are still far from having equal opportunities. According to a study from the German organization Aktion Mensch and additional data from the Institute of the German Economy from 2023, women with disabilities earn on average €667 less per month than men with disabilities. 37% of the women with disabilities work part-time, compared to only 14% of the men. And only 8% hold leadership positions. And if we would compare these numbers to those of non-disabled men, the gap would be even larger. These are not just statistics. They represent lost potential and systematic inequality. Behind each of these numbers is a person with a dream, a woman who could become an engineer, a researcher, or maybe even an astronaut, if they were only given the chance. Across Europe, women with disabilities are less likely to be employed, more likely to work part-time or in low-paid jobs, underrepresented in leadership roles, and often perceived as less capable, regardless of their actual performance. In space exploration, we talk a lot about pushing boundaries, about going further than ever before. But how can we truly explore new worlds if we still exclude so many people from this one? We need to open our minds, challenge our assumptions, and create real opportunities so that everyone has a place in the future we're building together. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your words. A quick housekeeping message before we move on. You have received from the ushers cards if you want to ask questions to the panelists. So please, if you want to ask questions, fill them in and give them back to the ushers that will be circulating, and that have been circulating them. Okay? So thank you. And now we welcome Solange Fuga. Is the youngest head physician in Italy, and besides exercising the chief director, emergency department in Aurelia Hospital, she's also very well known on social media for explaining the behind the scenes in emergency medicine.
Good evening, everyone. Members of the European Parliament, it is a true honor to be here today, not only as a doctor, but especially as a young woman who is walking a road that for many might seem impossible. At the age of 36, I am currently the chief director of an emergency department in Rome. But during my journey, I have experienced both pride and resistance. It is a rough pathway, and I struggle every day to be considered and to be heard the way I should. Some patients looking behind me, expecting a man to be the leader, but so far also the main issue, my colleagues asking me to prove myself twice as a physician and as a woman. So gender equality is still unfinished work. I have seen brilliant young women doubting their worth because of stereotypes. I have seen young doctors, men and women, discouraged by a culture that values privileges more than innovation. And I have learned, sometimes painfully, on my own skin, that jealousy and fear can silence even the most promising voices. So yet I am here today because I believe that change begins where resistance is strongest. Going on, I opened social medias. And social media gave me a new voice, a voice to speak beyond the walls of my hospital, to share, to connect, to inspire. And at first, it was seen as a distraction. But now it is a bridge between young doctors and their future, a bridge between science and society, and between women and the recognition they deserve. So I gained a significant popularity among time, and I have witnessed with my own eyes, through my colleagues and people, how my visibility has caused both admiration and disbelief. Disbelief always related to gender bias. So here are some of the words that I've heard with my own ears. Step back a little. You're too exposed right now. You should keep a lower profile. Or stay out of the spotlight for a while. So today, I ask all of you, what if I was a man? So to all the women listening, I say, fight your battle, save your strength to smile against who don't believe you made it so far. and make that change happen. Be resilient. So to all the members and all the people listening today, I say gender equality in medicine, in my field, is not a luxury. It is a responsibility. It's not about proving that women are better. It is about ensuring that every doctor, every researcher, every leader has the chance to give their best without prejudice and without limits. So, at the end, I'm not here to say we are the best, but together, men and women, let's do our best. Let's do it for science, let's do it for humanity, let's do it for equality. Thank you.
Grazie. And now let's hear from Joanna Birker. She's a professor of computer sciences in Graz University, and she's recognized on the Forbes 30 under 30 list and leads cutting-edge work on gamification, AI, and virtual reality. So, Joanna, you have the floor.
Okay, sorry. Thank you so much. I do have to start, like, what an amazing view I have at the moment. This is so inspiring for me, and I wish my computer science lectures as a computer science professors would look like this. Spoiler, they don't. I'm very engaged in trying to get more women into the field of computer science, but science and tech in general. And I often ask myself, against all the odds, why did I get a job as a computer science professor? Why am I in this field? How did I get there? And why I'm still in this field? And with that, to understand that, I want to share with you my personal story. And it started when I was a kid, like 2, 3, 4 years old. And my very first memory is when I was sitting at the DOS machine from my father, and I was playing a video game. I didn't know how to write or to read yet, but I did exactly know how to enter my favorite game, this DOS command line, to start Prince of Persia. Prince of Persia is a game you're this prince saving this princess, but this early access, and this is like one of the key points, early access gave me the power and also always this different idea of tech and PCs some people might have. For me, it was always this wonderful machine full of those amazing stories, full of this creativity. So I was never scared. I was never feared of this gray machine at all. So we need to give people, especially young girls, early this power. And that's why I'm one of the supporters to put coding and computer science education very early on into schools. Secondly, what you already heard, I love playing the video games. Prince of Persia, The Prince Saves the Princess. What was the next one? Zelda, Link Saves the Princess. Super Mario, The Plumber Saves the Princess. You see where I'm trying to go there. So in my mind, this crazy thought, what if I could create words like this? What if I could create a game where at some point a princess would save a prince? How crazy and absurd would this be? And this gave me also a different train of thought. So I started modding games and tried to learn myself coding very early on. This was like 30-ish years ago or 25-ish years ago. But for me, coding, then at that point, it was something so creative. So I always wanted to work in a creative way, be able to draw nicely, be able to write super well, be able to be the greatest musician. But I wasn't. Some of my colleagues were. But my creativity box was the computer. My creativity was coding, because everything which is in my head, I can show others through coding my games or my virtual worlds and invite others. And now we use the same tech to make the world hopefully a little bit better, to create virtual worlds where people can meet, and applications for medicine. So it's such a diverse field. And I think this is what I want to strengthen, that coding and computer science is so diverse, it's so colorful and so creative. Yeah, and against all the odds, even though I was this 10 to 18-year-old girl who was always programming the small little apps, the small little games, and I wanted to study computer science, what do you think what happened? My teachers told me not to do so. Family, friends told me not to go into computer science. Why? And I ask myself the question quite often because I think people still don't know what is computer science, how colorful it is, how diverse it is. So this would be my next call. We need to have education, strong education early on about the science fields we want to get people excited about, show how interesting it is, and especially educate everyone, not only show the girls how creative coding can be, but educate the parents, the grandparents, the teachers, that this is a place for everyone. So whatever I was doing then, also starting computer science, I was one of the few female computer science students. I didn't have a single female professor back then. And for me, it was just a world full of stereotypes, a world full of bias. Whatever I was interested in, whether it was being a gamer, this is nothing for you, people told me. Whether it was being a computer scientist, I had to work so much harder to be recognized by my peers. Whether it was now trying to get this academic career, I always had to be 100%, 150% to be seen at all and to be recognized as equal. So I think we really also need to take away those biases, those stereotypes. Just to give you some ideas on that, so I would be, based on the statistics, a typical gamer. If I would ask people, how do you think of what does a computer scientist or a gamer look like? It's always a boy or a man sitting in a basement in front of some ones and zeros. But according to the statistics, for instance, the average gamer is exactly me, a little bit over 30, mid-30-ish, and identifies as female. This is, I think, statistics we need to talk about. So we need to make sure also for me as a computer science student, I wished I would have had a very good support system back then, a good infrastructure, and also role models. So more people being visible, telling me that I could become a professor, because during my whole studies, I never thought of that I could become this professor as well, because I didn't see one. So what I want to add here, the very dark side as well, is that we also need to think once we have people in this space, how do we keep them? Because during all my experiences, during all those years, I made so many terrible experiences, so really terrible experiences. And I think we really need to work very hard to make the spaces we create and where we want to push young girls into also a very safe space. So that people don't only feel invited and welcome, but also won't leave the space because of, I won't go into detail there, but it needs to be an inclusive and safe infrastructure. And here we are back to education. We don't only need to educate young girls how cool computer science or science can be, educate family that this is a space for everyone, get rid of stereotypes, but also educate men and boys how to create inclusive environments. With that, one last thing I would like to say, we need to be fast, because everything is evolving very fast. We are living in a digital society, and I'm in the computer science academic space since 20 years, and it didn't change a lot. So let's make sure that every girl who loves to play, to build, to be creative, to imagine the future knows that she also belongs to those places. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, and thanks to you all for sharing your such inspiring stories, shining a light on how we identify hidden talent, what conditions enable it to shine, what changes are needed to close the gaps, to maintain also the people in place. Now we have several questions, and we will start with a question and give the floor to Carolina Morace, the member of the Parliament. Mrs. Morace, you have the floor.
Carolina Morace.
Yes.
Because I chose one, so I don't know which one I chose.
You choose to who you want in the panel.
Esistono ancora.
There are still strong regional disparities between the north and the south if you look at women's participation in the workplace. Do you think the EU should have different incentives for the laggards, or do you think that would go against equal treatment? Thank you.
Is there a panelist that you wanted to react in particular?
I leave open.
Yes. Okay. So, you want to react, Mrs. Legano?
I'm going to answer. I'm not sure if I'm the best place in the panel, but I would say if we are talking of equality, we definitely have to look at the situations that we are facing, right? So we need to take action in the same manner as I do it internally when I want the teams, the organization to walk the talk and to actually look at these situations thoroughly based on data, based on diagnosis. What is the situation? There we need to be looking at the situation. So yes, definitely you need to tailor your tools to the situations you actually have.
So, if no one else from the panel wants to react, yes, I see.
I agree.
Sola. Yes, I agree. Thank you. I think we have other questions, and I give the floor to Marc Angel, that had also a question. And maybe who you address the question to, Marc.
Thank you very much. First of all, for organizing this Gender Equality Week. Maybe next year we could call it Gender Justice Week, because that would be more important, because it's a big question of justice. But anyway, my question is, and I was very inspired by Dr. Solange Fugger, who said, challenge begins where resistance is strongest. How do we resist the anti-gender movement? What is your narrative if somebody tells you when you're defending women's rights, oh, this is gender ideology, this is ideology? I tell you one little story. I was working on the Pay Transparency Directive for my political group, the S&D group, and some colleagues told me, this is ideology. Then I had to recall them that it's in the treaty since 1957, an article which says equal pay for equal work or work of equal value between men and women. So it's not about ideology, it is anti-discrimination and it's human rights. But now every time we try to defend women's rights, we try to defend minorities, and which is normal. We are ideologists. How do we combat that? How do we answer these people who have spread this narrative? And also, Mrs. Benthaus, you talked about intersectional discrimination. You know that the word intersectional, when we have it in a text here, we have to defend it, because a lot of colleagues here want to erase that word. Gender, intersectional, they don't want to see this in texts. And how do we convince that this is important and that this is nothing to do with ideology? Nothing. But we're always faced with this, you ideologists.
I think you were the first addressed.
Sì, it's a little bit tough to answer in English, so I will go with Italian, okay? È uno snodo fondamentale.
This is a crucial point. So we need to ask ourselves, how can we fight against this gigantic gap? This resistance scars you over time. You need to be extremely strong to be able to do this. I'm talking about my field. I'm talking about my situation. I often have to fit in to a framework where that doesn't want progress. So if you're 36, it's difficult for them to say, as a woman, that, okay, you're doing okay, this is all right. So it's a constant struggle. But I think that education, emotional education, which starts with one's family, is extremely important. I think that hopefully with time, this emotional education will be able to plug the gap. But it is not easy. We've got our work cut out for us. It's a difficult path. Personally, it is the enormous passion that I have for what I do that has got me through. I think if I didn't have it, I wouldn't be here.
Mrs. Benthouse, I think you were also addressed the question.
Yes, so first of all, I didn't know that intersectional is a word which is seen a little critical. That's interesting to me. I don't think I have like the one answer for it. It's more like when I looked at me, like what can I tell on my talk? It should have been a little bit about my story, who I am. And I feel like I felt discriminated because I'm in a wheelchair, and I felt discriminated because I'm a woman already in my life. So you cannot separate like one from the other, you know. So and those both together is really creating a bigger barrier than I thought. Like I can see a difference to before I was disabled. So I still had to fight like against, you know, guys who were studying with me, don't take me serious or whatever. But then since I'm in a wheelchair, I feel like people really constantly underestimating me, and it sums up. So that's why I think it should be seen, not isolated, as I said in my talk.
Thank you. I think Mrs. Legalo Flores wanted to react to, and to you in particular, we have a second question, so maybe I'll join that one. There was a question from the audience that is not named, but mentioning that, referring to the Women's Mentorship Program that you have in place in the Economic and Social Committee, and if maybe you can give some elements to the participants after your comments. Thank you.
Yes, with pleasure. I wanted to thank you for the question. At the ESC, we are the House of Civil Society, so we do have the opportunity to get a lot of data from the grounds and to get a lot of research and experimentations as well. And I wanted to name two things. There is a very strong backlash. We know that from all the research on the field is exactly what you are mentioning. It's every time more difficult to talk of the words of equality, of gender. Intersectionality has become a word that is not only explaining the fact that it is more difficult with the different types of challenges one may face, and it's becoming, and this, I just want to insist on the fact that it is important today that each of us, we take stock of this. This is happening. It is happening very fast. I join you on the urgency and the fact that we need to move quickly. And I join you on the resistance part, which is actually, I think, a good indicator of when we need to take action. Additionally to the resistance, I would say passion is extremely important in order to continue. And I would also say surround yourselves with people that can contribute to support the move, because sometimes it is, it's demanding, I would say. On the question of the ESC Women Forum, the ESC Women Forum is thought as a space, and it has three patterns. It was designed participatorily, so it was not top-down. It was designed by the people who were interested in joining, men and women, both members and colleagues, because we really wanted to unite the strengths. And the people decided that it would be around three pillars. One pillar is about inspiration, and I thank everybody for the talks. Really, it's been extremely inspiring to listen to all of you today. One is about the program. The other one is about a safe space. There must be, you mentioned it also, there must be a space where you can listen, people can talk, people can feel seen, people can feel safe, and so you actually design the solutions that you need. And third, it was about mentoring. It was about facilitating the growth of women in the house. And the way we are doing it, we are calling on volunteers to be mentors. We are training them in a way that is social innovation in a sense, and then we will have the mentorships last 9 months.
Thank you. I think, Mrs. Birker, you also wanted to react to the question of Mr. Angel.
I just wanted to add, especially to the first question, there's so much science showing the potential, for instance, of the power of language, the power of what it does to scientific teams when the teams are diverse and so on and so forth. So I would always try to answer with science. I know not everyone is listening to science, so the second answer I would answer with the economic power. So the economic power is certainly something which at the moment we need to consider, especially in Europe, because especially we talked about AI quite often today. If we look at Asia and the US, Europe is very far behind. And I think we really need every power and every digital competence we can get. And we heard, and I can fully underline and agree, that there's so much more potential if we direct the right people. So I would go with those arguments.
Thank you. I think we have a question from a trainee, Sofia Almeida. So I don't know where you are, but yes. And can you, yes, press the speak button and
yes, does it work?
Questions.
Lovely. Well, first of all, thank you for your contributions. It was really inspiring to hear from everyone. When we look around the room today, we see a lot more women than men present. And while I think it's super important to celebrate individual women's achievements and ambition, that alone won't fix the issue. So how can we make sure that the fight for gender equality, gender justice, is understood as everyone's issue and not just another burden that women must carry alone? That's for everyone to answer. Thank you.
I think I would start with Mrs. Golfo. You have a long experience.
Ma credo che
I believe that this is a cultural issue above all. I think that we have made a lot of progress, especially when it comes to women's issues. But I think that we need a bit more trust and confidence in ourselves. I have experience from a foundation that was set up 37 years ago in Italy. And 37 years ago, no one believed in the work that we actually did, and we became an example in Italy. I think that equality isn't an objective that is too far away. It is quite close to us. We have to believe in it, and we have to work towards this. And the whole of Europe has to do that, because, as I was saying, gender equality isn't about giving equality to women. Above all, it's about freedom, but it's also about our GDP, because we need women who will work, because we'll only be able to achieve gender equality when all women have the possibility to work and to choose their own job. So I actually feel very optimistic, because we have progressed in leaps and bounds over the last few decades all over Europe. If I think of myself, I think about when I presented this bill on women's quotas on company boards. My colleagues didn't really take this very seriously, and yet with determination, believing in this, it was a question of justice, we managed. And I think that this is very much about what Europe will do. I think that we're on the right track. I feel optimistic. I think we're on the right track. And this event organized this afternoon proves this. We're here, we've told our stories, we've explained what we're doing in our own countries. So maybe we need to organize more events such as this one. We need to meet more often and to listen to each other more often. Because then we'll hear about these values and the initiatives taken in other countries. I'd also like to make another point. The Marisa Belisario Foundation gives a prize to 3 engineers in different sectors because Marisa Belisario said to young women, be careful, don't go for the humanities, choose the sciences, because that's what tomorrow is all about. And she also said that in front of a computer, men and women are equal. So let's think of this. And because of this example, we go through a whole selection procedure in universities in order to cherry pick 3 engineers to give a prize. There was only 1 who got these top marks, and yet we need to make sure that we have people to choose from, and we did, and I think that speaks volumes. But I think we're on the right track. Europe needs to show more solidarity. We need more events that bring us together. Maybe it should be less about chatting, but more about talking about the real things like we're doing this afternoon. So this is something that I would like to say happen, and this is my message. Thank you.
I don't know if there were other panelists that had a quick reaction, so we can take another question. So, Mrs. Legado, yes.
No, I'll have one very quick reaction. I think it is important right now. We see an acceleration of the backlash. This we have to acknowledge. We are at a moment, if you look at global scale, where it seems to be okay to say that equality is not such a nice thing anymore. If we say that, if we accept this, it means that the contrary is. And the contrary, we know the word. It's called supremacy. Supremacy of whom? This is the type of discussion we need to have. And in that conversation, I think it is important to include men, to actually put some spaces where we actually, I agree with you, it's surprising. But we can do that, and I think we can do that through a logic of a visibilization of silent majorities. Actually, the situation, we need to give the floor, to be able to give the floor and to enter into conversations with men who are actually convinced of the importance of that and not okay with the fact that supremacy could be an option wherever or in other places of the world, or it becomes a narrative. And that, I think, is the important short-term message we could concentrate on. The long-term is obviously education.
Yes. Any other remarks now? Otherwise, we take a question. I think there was a question from Stefano Spinacci. Yes. A short question, and then we can take a quick response throughout, because I think some people are trying to close.
First, a disclaimer, because I'm just a porte-parole. This question, this comment comes from another panel that I attended on Friday from a woman. So it's about how already when we are in early age, there is a sense of differentiation in the education and also in the expectation that the society and the family has on a young female and young male child. So the male child, if you break toys, you are smart because you try to demonte and to discover how it works. And if you fail, it's fine. while most of the time young female child they are supposed to be perfect and not to make problems and so on. So I think already this concept of not taking risk and being in the safe side but in the wrong way, because to develop your talent you need also to take risk, to make errors. You have to be allowed to make errors already when you are a child. So my question is does it start already at a very early age, this gap? It's not my question, by the way.
Yes. I think I will take a round before we give the closing remarks to Vice President Sperner, but I would say start with Mrs. Birker.
No, absolutely. So I think it starts really early on, and as I mentioned earlier, it starts with the education, with the parents, with the grandparents, with everything which is given by the system itself. And I was, for instance, shocked at some point. So Lego was used to be either for girls or for boys, and you have a specific age recommendation. And the ones with the girls label for the same age were sometimes maybe a little less complex. So I fully agree. In general, we do need to challenge, to learn, and to educate. And I need to point out, for that I do love video games, for instance, because video games make us able to learn that it's okay that we fail and then get better, and then fail and get better. And that's, yeah. Just a little bit of a side note there.
Maybe Mrs. Fugger?
La risposta è sì.
The answer is yes. The problem, I would say, is social-cultural, 80% social-cultural. So I'll refer to what I said before. We need education. It's your mom, your father, your grandparents that need to teach you this. And I think that's extremely important. So, yeah, I fully agree with what you say.
Other panelists, I think, if we finish the round, Mrs. Benthouse or so, you want to react?
So, yes, I also agree that we need to include men in these discussions for sure, and that it should not only be on women. I also think we have to start at a very early age, because from how this topic is treated within families, that makes a big difference later on. So I think also some other thing I would like to add. I feel like these topics are being popular sometimes, and then another times not popular anymore. So, for example, the climate crisis was a very big topic a few years ago, and now nobody really talks about it anymore. So I feel like we should think about how we could keep this gender equality topic stable long term, and having a stable increase. Yeah, I hope you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. I think Mrs. Legale-Flores, you also wanted to add something?
I wanted to share very quickly a positive insight on that, actually. So absolutely, completely agree on the fact that it is a convergence of a series of elements in the systemic world we live that slowly, very slowly make girls and young women integrate. It's an internal belief that it comes little by little, that that path might not be open for them. But 2 days ago, we had at the ESC the communication of a European research project, 3-year research project, which worked on a very simple thing. It was 5 classes for girls on political participation. And it went from very generic things like what is politics? And then how do you change something? And and was 5 classes, and the results are amazing. So the good news of that is, if you really put on the table openly, transparently, you courageously, you open it and you put it on the table, there are things that can be changed, but it has to happen early in the education process to sort of counterbalance some of the rest.
Okay. I think we will leave it here. I would like now to invite Vice President Sperner to share some concluding remarks. Vice President, you have the floor.
Grazie, Delphine.
Thank you very much, Delphine. I'd like to thank everyone for your patience, for listening, and for participating. It's not easy to really get so involved and to listen and to pay attention to everything that is happening. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your stories, because the whole point of this afternoon was exactly that. We wanted to hear from you on the front line, from different walks of life. We've heard about different difficulties across the board from different areas, but I would say there are three key messages. First of all, the gap is still there. I think that this is a common thread running through all your stories. The second is the need for urgency, that we need to act quickly. And that's why it was very important to hear your stories, but to make sure that we don't just stop there. And Gemma is here, Mr. Angel, Mrs. Morace. They're all colleagues, MEPs who have been here with us and have taken part in this event. And of course, we have colleagues who have connected remotely. So we have to make sure that this event doesn't finish here. People can go back and listen as well. And I'd like to thank Evelyn Regner, who was the one behind Gender Equality Week. So we're here following this tradition, hopefully in the best possible way, and honoring the spirit that she had in mind when this was set up. There are very different sectors, and there are a lot of men. And yet, when you go online, you manage to break down the walls, and there are other sectors that seem very far away, as you mentioned. And there are women who have come up with laws. When you referred to this Italian law, and no one really believed that, I was a young parliamentary assistant back then, and I actually worked in the committee that was responsible for this. And I remember the different views there were, and people felt that maybe this law was less important than others when dealt with in a committee. But then, and it was adopted, and it had a certain transition period. It wanted to change people's mindset. Yes, merit shouldn't know any gender, but it was transitional. It was temporary in order to get things going. And I remember this. And it's extremely important to think about this and to have these things that might seem extremely strong, but often they are transitional. These are the things that will switch people's mindset and that will allow us to take off and to achieve our objective. Now, hopefully, and I'm not trying to insult the colleague who came up with it, maybe our goal should be not to have to hold gender equality weeks anymore. We know that the situation, we're not there yet. It's not enough to listen to these stories. We have to be able to take this and apply it to the work that we do on a daily basis. Talent holds the key to the future, and I think that this is an idea that we can all agree on in this debate. We have the responsibility to act within the European Parliament, and as MEPs, we organize activities in the European Parliament, come up with the Gender Action Plan, for example. The last question today touched on this. If you create the right conditions so that people's talent can shine, then it means that these individuals that will work in companies or in the public authorities will also have the time to become parents, to teach their children all about this. So we're talking about a virtuous circle. And if we create the right family environment where we're taught that we're all the same, where we're taught to be tolerant, where we're taught to grab hold of opportunities and run with them, that is extremely important. So this is also a responsibility that lawmakers have. We have to think about this. Now, I don't want to drag this out. I'd like to thank Mrs. Galvez and Mrs. Kopacz. They had to leave because they had work in their committees. But I'd like to thank them for being here, and I'd like to thank President Metsola, who sent a very powerful message, a video message. And I'd like to thank Commissioner Virkkunen, who's responsible for for technology. She is an executive vice president, and she came to talk about the union of skills. This is what the European Commission is doing in order to change course. I think is the best possible way to celebrate this Gender Equality Week, and I hope that you'll be able to apply everything you've heard and learned about. And I hope that young women and young men will be able to apply all of this here. They're still young, and hopefully they'll be able to take up these points and apply them and think about this for the future. I think that is the main message here. Let us believe in our talent, let us believe in our dreams, and let us not wilt away. Because we have to make sure that society is in a position to be able to do this. And as politicians, we shoulder a huge responsibility, and we assume this responsibility. Thank you very much for today. I wish you the best of luck in your respective domains. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President. Thank you to all the speakers, and thank you all to you for being here today. Let's carry forward the ideas from today, keep the conversations alive beyond this room, and, of course, have a wonderful Gender Equality Week. Thank you.